The Pacific Ocean. 63 million square miles of volatile, untamed wilderness. It is the largest physical feature on Earth, a blue void that is hostile to human life, yet teeming with energy beneath the surface. Here, in the deep currents, patrols a predator designed by millions of years of evolution for one purpose: speed. The tuna, warm-blooded, hydrodynamic, and relentless. It is the wolf of the sea. Every year, Americans consume 1 billion pounds of canned tuna. It is the ultimate pantry staple, a source of shelf-stable, high-quality protein that sits in nearly every kitchen cabinet from Seattle to Miami. But the simplicity of the can belies the complexity of its creation. How does a wild animal, hunted thousands of miles from civilization, end up perfectly preserved, safe, and delicious in a metal container that can last for years? It requires a cold chain that operates at -0 degrees. It demands a fleet of ships that function like floating cities. And it relies on a manufacturing process that combines brute force butchery with surgical sterilization. Welcome to the edge of the industrial food chain. Welcome to the mega tuna factory. To understand the can, we must first understand the catch. We are 2,000 miles from the nearest port, aboard a super seiner. This is not a boat. It is a $30 million mobile industrial complex. Captain John Miller doesn't look out the window to find fish. He looks at data. Tuna are migratory, moving constantly to regulate their body temperature and find food. To track them, the modern captain utilizes a sophisticated array of electronic warfare technology. First, the S-band bird radar. It detects flocks of seabirds from 20 miles away. In the open ocean, birds diving means baitfish are surfacing, and baitfish surfacing usually means tuna are pushing them up from below. But the ultimate eye in the sky is the onboard helicopter. The pilot is the scout. He looks for shiners, the flash of tuna turning on their sides, or breezers, where the school creates a subtle ripple effect on the surface water. He radios the coordinates back to the bridge. The hunt is on. Not all tuna are destined for the same can. The industry targets 3 main species. First, Katsuonis pelamis, the skipjack. Small, abundant, and sustainable, this is the chunk-light tuna found in most sandwiches. Second, the yellowfin, a larger fish with a milder flavor. And finally, the albacore, the only species the FDA allows to be labeled as white meat. Tuna are unique among fish. They possess a specialized network of blood vessels called the rete mirabile. This countercurrent heat exchange system allows them to keep their muscles warmer than the surrounding water. They are essentially warm-blooded. This biology gives them explosive speed, but it creates a massive challenge for the food processor. The school is identified. It's a mix of skipjack and yellowfin. The captain initiates the set. The vessel deploys a heavy skiff from the stern. This boat acts as a sea anchor, holding one end of the net while the mothership throttles up to full speed, circling the school. They are deploying a purse seine net. It is a nylon colossus, over a mile long and 600 feet deep. It hangs like a curtain in the water. Once the circle is complete, the pursing begins. A massive hydraulic winch pulls a steel cable running through rings at the bottom of the net, cinching it shut like a drawstring purse. The floor drops out from under the fish. They are trapped. This vessel adheres to strict dolphin-safe protocols. Before the net is hauled, the captain verifies that no dolphins are associated with the tuna school. If a marine mammal is accidentally encircled, the crew performs a back-down maneuver, sinking one end of the float line to create an escape channel. As the net tightens, the fish begin to panic. This is the most critical moment for food safety. Because tuna are warm-blooded, the stress of the capture causes their body temperature to spike, sometimes reaching 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat triggers a dangerous chemical reaction. Bacteria on the fish's skin and gut begin to break down an amino acid called histidine into histamine. Histamine is odorless and tasteless, but consumption can cause scombroid poisoning, a severe allergic reaction. Once formed, histamine cannot be destroyed by cooking. The only way to stop this reaction is thermal shock. The clock starts the second the fish leave the water. There is no time for gutting or cleaning on the ship. The catch slides immediately into the brine wells. These are massive, insulated tanks filled with a slurry of seawater and salt. Normal water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but by adding salt, the freezing point is depressed. This supercooled brine remains liquid at -0 degrees. The tuna are submerged in this icy bath. The liquid contact freezes the fish solid from the outside in within hours, halting all enzymatic activity, and locking the histamine level at near zero. To keep the fishing fleet efficient, they do not return to port with every catch. Instead, they meet reefer vessels in designated high-seas zones. These floating warehouses collect the frozen catch from multiple boats. Weeks later, the reefer arrives at the processing hub. Major global canneries are located in Thailand, Ecuador, and American Samoa. Here, the frozen tuna, now rock-hard logs of protein, are offloaded into refrigerated trucks. Before they enter the factory, they face the drill. Quality control officers drill into the core of random fish samples to measure the temperature. If the log shows any fluctuation above the safety zone during transit, the entire shipment is rejected. Safety is binary. It is either frozen or it is waste. We have arrived at the mega factory. This single facility processes 300 metric tons of tuna every day, enough to fill 2 million cans. The frozen fish enter the thawing stage. You cannot butcher a fish that is harder than concrete. The tuna are placed in sizing tanks where circulating water gently raises their temperature. This is a delicate balance. Thaw them too fast with hot water, and the cellular structure ruptures, turning the meat to mush. Thaw them too slow, and bacterial growth restarts. Once the fish reaches a firm, rubbery state, it moves to the butchering line. Here, the fish are eviscerated. The internal organs are removed. Nothing in the factory is wasted. The viscera are collected and processed into fish meal, a high-protein feed used in aquaculture and agriculture. The cleaned fish are now ready for the first cook. Unlike salmon, which is often canned raw, tuna is cooked twice. This is the pre-cook. The racks are loaded into giant atmospheric steam cookers. The purpose of the pre-cook is not sterilization. It is mechanical preparation. Raw tuna meat clings tenaciously to the bone and skin. By steaming the fish at 215 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 to 3 hours, the heat denatures the proteins. As the proteins contract, the meat firms up and releases its grip on the skeletal structure. It also releases natural oils and moisture. Up to 20% of the fish's weight is lost here. This ensures that the final product in the can is meat, not water. The fish emerge from the steamers piping hot and extremely fragile. If handled now, they would crumble. They are moved into a stabilization room where chilled air and a fine water mist bring their temperature down. This resting phase allows the flesh to firm up, preparing it for the most labor-intensive step of all. Welcome to the loining room. Despite the age of automation, no robot has yet mastered the complex anatomy of the tuna. This stage relies on the dexterity of the human hand. The workers perform a surgical disassembly. First, the head and tail are removed. Then, the skin is peeled away gently to avoid tearing the meat. The fish is split in half, removing the central spine. Here is the distinction between pet food and people food. Running along the tuna's lateral line is a strip of dark red muscle. This is the bloodline, rich in iron and blood, used for sustained swimming. It has a strong, fishy mineral taste that American palates reject. The workers meticulously scrape this red meat away, sending it to the pet food line. What remains are 4 perfect, ivory-pink loins, the premium muscle of the fish. The loins enter the pack shaper. This machine compresses the meat into a uniform log and slices it to fit the specific can size. For solid white albacore, the loin is cut in one large segment, preserving the muscle integrity. For chunk light, the meat is mechanically chopped into smaller pieces. The machine deposits exactly 5 ounces of meat into each can. At this stage, the meat is dry. To enhance flavor and facilitate heat transfer, a liquid medium is added. This is usually a vegetable broth, salt water, or oil. This liquid fills the air voids inside the can, which is crucial for the sterilization process. Now, the can must be sealed against the world. It enters the double seamer. In a blink of an eye, the machine clinches the lid onto the can body. This is not a simple press fit. It is a mechanical interlocking of metal. The flange of the can and the curl of the lid are rolled together to create a hermetic seal. If this seal fails by even a micron, bacteria can enter. The can is sealed, but the food inside is not yet safe. It contains non-pathogenic bacteria from the handling process. To make it shelf-stable for 5 years, it must be sterilized. The cages are loaded into the retort, a massive industrial pressure cooker. The door locks. Steam is injected, raising the pressure and temperature. The target is commercial sterility. The cans are held at 240 degrees Fahrenheit for a specific time calculated by thermal bacteriologists. This is the kill step. This temperature is non-negotiable. It is the only way to destroy the spores of Clostridium botu. Linum, the bacteria that causes botulism. The heat penetrates to the geometric center of every can, ensuring that nothing survives. The
Yeah,
cans
have
are
some more of the paneer.
rapidly
It's
cooled to
delicious.
stop the
Thank you.
cooking
The gulab
process.
jamun is wonderful,
Now
isn't it,
safe
sweetheart?
and
Yes, it's
sterile,
my favorite.
they are essentially time capsules. They pass through a dud detector. This acoustic device taps each lid. A vacuum sealed can rings with a high pitch. A compromised can sounds a dull thud and is instantly rejected by a burst of air. The bright, familiar labels, Starkest Bumblebee Chicken of the Sea, are glued on at lightning speed. Finally, a laser printer etches a code onto the bottom of the can. This code is the product's DNA. It identifies the date, the exact time of sterilization, the cannery line, and even the boat that caught the fish. It is total traceability. From the loading dock, the tuna begins its final voyage to distribution centers in Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. It is a process that bridges the gap between the primal hunter-gatherer instinct and the demands of modern convenience. It takes a wild animal, swimming at 40 miles per hour in the deep Pacific, and through a symphony of ice, steam, and steel, transforms it into a nutritious staple available for less than $2. So the next time you open a can of tuna, listen for the hiss of the vacuum seal. It is the sound of safety. It is the sound of a global journey completed. Inside the tuna factory, the bounty of the ocean is captured, preserved, and delivered to you.